Let's check in with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine. And Happy New Year to you, Joe. I was thinking about you over the holidays and how it wasn't much of a holiday for you with all the bombing and missile attacks. How are you holding up today?
Yeah, Bob, Happy New Year. Great to speak with you again. The one positive thing is that the weather has been unusually warm. It was almost 60 degrees over the weekend. And so it's a major reprieve because, people have to go to tents and, sort of heating points to keep warm. So Mother Nature was on Ukraine's side. But yeah, beyond that, there were a number of attacks, going back to, Christmas Eve. There were attacks on the center of Kherson. And then last Thursday, we had the major nationwide attacks, including here in Lviv. And then on New Year's Eve, even though there was a curfew, of course, throughout the country, before the curfew, people were gathering and singing songs in the center of Kyiv. And then just a few hours later, through the night, into the early hours of 2023, the Russians hit Kyiv in particular with those Iranian drones. And so there were attacks through the night into the early hours of the morning, and including on New Year's Eve, the Russians hit apartment buildings in Kyiv, even a hotel. There was a Japanese journalist injured. I actually almost stayed in that hotel a few weeks ago, and I just had a bad feeling about it, and so I didn't stay there. But that's it's a as we always say, it's a roulette. You never know. Any place at any moment could be struck, and so that's been. It's a strange New Year's vibe. I mean, people still got together to share memories and hopes, but it's and the weather has given a sort of a positive boost. But it's obviously still a bleak situation. One more piece of good news, though, is that in the occupied city or village of Makivka in the Luhansk region, Ukrainians hit a major Russian depot that according even to Russian estimates, it seems there were 400 Russian soldiers were wiped out. And that was also on New Year's Eve. So the battle continues. And there's no break on the holidays.
Was that the attack where the Russians said 63 were killed? Is that the same one?
Yes, and there's different estimates. Of course, I don't like to quote numbers because it's really hard to know from either side because everyone, has to, work on the propaganda aspect of it. But by all accounts, it seemed that it was, whenever the Russians talk about such an attack, it must have been pretty bad. And there were reports that the local population, the Russian authorities are accusing the locals of helping the Ukrainians, of giving them information about, where the Russians were housing their soldiers. And so you can just imagine what kind of repercussions there are for the people who live in that area.
Mm-hmm. Back to that hotel you mentioned, Joe. Why did you have a bad feeling about it?
Partly because it was located not far from the rail station and from some of the infrastructure in Kyiv. I was in a nice neighborhood, and actually I have friends who live nearby there. It's weird. I mean, just imagine like you're trying to book a hotel in Kharkiv or Kyiv, and you're like, oh, you got to consider the price and you consider the neighborhood, and then you have to consider this thing that you could never actually define, but will it get hit or not? That's a whole other level of sort of anxiety that has to go into every decision that you make, and it's impossible to know for sure what might happen. And so sometimes as I start to learn, as I've learned these past more than 10 months, it's good to trust your instincts. If you have a strong instinct, trust it.
You and I haven't spoken since President Zelenskiy addressed the Congress here. I have to tell you, I listened live to that entire speech, and it brought me to tears. What was your reaction, and what was the reaction to the people you've been with there?
Likewise, it brought me to tears. It was inspiring, and as we talked about, I mean, I was so similar to Winston Churchill's address on December 26, 1941. And I think he showed, and even the fact that he didn't wear a suit, I think he showed the urgency of this moment, the seriousness of this moment. And, some say, he's an actor, so of course he did well. But some of the greatest actors are method actors, right? Where they have to live in the role. And everyone here, including Zelenskiy, is forced to live in this role of being in the crisis situation. And so he thinking, Churchill also was a great performer. And so I think that watching Zelensky's speech, there was no one better in this moment suited to represent the Ukrainian people and the soldiers. And so many people I talked to, not everyone watched it because, the daily demands of life here, sometimes makes it difficult for people to keep up with those things. But those who did watch it and everyone knew sort of the effect of it. People felt that he was there in the corner of the Ukrainians. And I thought, when he stood next to President Biden, he even though he was asking for help, and he also said later, he said, this is not charity, it's an investment. And I thought he put himself at equal level as a statesman. Certainly he has the credentials by having been in Kyiv this whole time. And I thought he looked every part of the statesman. And I, from my experience working in Washington, like so often I can be critical of Congress, and I think there's a lot of silliness there. That was such a moment of consequence. And I hope that speech also inspires our own politics to be more purpose driven.
We can only hope. And also, I'm happy about the warm weather there easing Ukraine's electricity demand. And let's hope for more good news in the coming year. Slava Ukraini in 2024, Joseph.
Heroim Slava, Bob. Good to talk to you again.
Yes, sir. Joseph Lindsley, world's most interesting man.
This I find in my garden. It's peace from rocket.
Help us to win in the war.